team. In 1901, Greek sponge divers stumbled upon a shipwreck that was unlike any other. They found huge statues of Aphrodite and Dionysus, but what caught their eye most were strange-looking bronze gears that seemed to be part of some sort of device. What they had discovered was the Antikythera Mechanism, one of the greatest archaeological finds of all time, a calculator from ancient Greece dating back over 2,000 years. But how did it work? We now know that this so-called orrery was not just a single device, but an entire collection of devices put together in a wooden box that was around 35 centimeters wide, 25 centimeters tall, and 30 centimeters deep. The box contains several different devices used to tell the time, predict astronomical phenomena such as lunar and solar eclipses, and even calculate the dates of important religious festivals. It's important to keep in mind that this is ancient Greece, not modern-day Greece. We're talking about a time before Jesus Christ, when people believed that the Earth was the center of the universe with the moon, planets, and stars rotating around it. And so this device was created using geocentric models of the cosmos, meaning it had the Earth at its center. Nowadays we know that this is incorrect, and that the Sun is actually at the center of our solar system. But still, for its time, the Antikythera Mechanism was incredibly accurate. Most importantly, it was also incredibly complex. Archaeologists were able to identify over 80 bronze gears, though we don't know the total number, since many have been eroded away. These gears would have been attached to even more dials and pointers, which could indicate various astronomical positions and calculations. The sheer complexity of the Antikythera Mechanism is almost unbelievable. It contains more moving parts than some modern pocket watches. Researchers analyzed the mechanism using X-ray technology and discovered that there were two main dials on the front, one that showed the phases of the moon and another that showed the position of 5 planets, including the Sun. The lunar dial was highly detailed. It had a pointer that indicated the current phase of the moon and another pointer that showed the month. Around the edge of the dial were the 12 signs of the zodiac, Taus. The moon moved through these signs. It would cast its light on each one, giving rise to the common phrase, the moon in Capricorn. For example, this dial was also highly accurate. It calculated the phases of the moon to within a few hours of the actual cycle, which takes 27 days, 7 hours, 43 minutes, and 22 seconds. For comparison, the phases of the moon can sometimes be predicted incorrectly by popular apps like the Period Tracker, which uses only a simplified algorithm and not actual astronomical calculations. The planetary dial was just as impressive. It allowed the user to track the position of the Sun, the Moon, and 4 visible planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. The reason why only 5 planets are shown is because ancient Greeks did not know that there were any others. In fact, they believed that there were only 5 planets in the sky. That's why they gave each planet a special status. The Sun and the Moon were considered gods, and the other 4 planets were associated with various gods and goddesses. Skew. You may have noticed that we didn't mention Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. Well, that's because these planets were not discovered until much later in history. Uranus was discovered in 1781, Neptune in 1846, and Pluto in 1930. Saturn, however, has been known since ancient times. However, ancient astronomers were unable to detect its rings, and so it's possible that if they had done so, then they would have made Saturn a god as well. To use the Antikythera Mechanism, one would have needed to set the device according to the date and time, TO. After that, the planets would move realistically across the dial. This took an incredible amount of mathematics and engineering. Each planet's movement is governed by a different equation. For example, the Moon moves in an epicycle, while Venus moves in a cycloid. Mercury and Mars move in a squint. Jupiter moves in a slow arch. And lastly, the Sun moves in a retrograde motion. This last one is especially interesting because it was known even by ancient Greeks that the Sun does not move in a circle, but rather travels along a path that is tilted relative to the Earth's equator. This explains why the Sun appears to move backwards in the sky during certain times of the year. To account for this motion, the gear train of the Antikythera Mechanism was placed at an angle. The entire mechanism was capable of calculating extremely complex mathematical formulas, something that had never been done before. Some researchers say that the Antikythera mechanism used a series of differential gears to make its calculations, but others disagree. One thing that we know for sure is that the mechanism had no battery or electric power source. All of its movements were driven by human power. Someone would have had to turn a crank on the side of the device to make it work. So how exactly did they do it? How did they turn astronomical observations into mechanical movements? Here's what we think happened. First, the gear would receive a rotary motion from the crank. Then the rotary motion would be converted to a reciprocating motion, basically back and forth motion. Finally, the reciprocating motion would drive a pin that would control the position of the planets. This pin would have been connected to a series of levers that controlled the planetary dials. But how did ancient Greeks come up with such an advanced piece of technology? They were known to be intelligent people, but nothing suggests that they were geniuses. And yet they were able to develop such a complex machine. And so scientists have speculated that the creators of the Antikythera mechanism may have been influenced by aliens. Third, there is some evidence to suggest this. For example, some of the gear teeth looked very similar to those on modern-day Rolex watches. But this is probably just a coincidence. Another piece of evidence is that the bronze used in the Antikythera mechanism was extremely pure, around 99% pure. Most bronze objects found in ancient Greece are around 90% pure. But this again doesn't prove that aliens were involved. It's quite possible that the ancient Greeks had developed a method for purifying bronze. We also know that the Antikythera mechanism was created sometime before 70 BC, because it was mentioned by Roman philosopher Pliny the Elder. He said that only 2 of these machines existed in the world, one in the possession of the king of Egypt and the other owned by a Roman senator named Tullius. Unfortunately, both of these devices were destroyed centuries ago. But the one found in the Antikythera shipwreck was created sometime after 70 BC. Researchers were able to determine this because they found a lead weight stamped with the image of a rooster. The rooster was the symbol of the constellation Aquila, which was prominent in the night sky in the year 100 BC. But if the device was created after this date, then it must have been completed sometime before 100 AD, because in 100 AD, the constellation Aquila was no longer visible from the northern hemisphere. It's not clear who created the Antikythera mechanism, though it was likely made by a group of engineers and astronomers. What is clear is that it was a remarkable achievement for its time. The Antikythera mechanism was lost for centuries, but it was rediscovered in the early 20th century. It is now kept in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, where it continues to amaze visitors with its beauty and complexity. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other videos on ancient Greek technology. I made a video on the hero of Alexandria, an ancient engineer who invented many machines such as a coin-operated vending machine, a steam engine, and even a robot. I also made a video on Archimedes, one of the greatest scientists of all time, who invented things like the compound bow, catapults, the Archimedes spiral, and the claw of Archimedes. Thanks for watching.